Mind Show, your number one community building show in the world. Every Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m. CST, live on Facebook and YouTube. Join us as we discuss pertinent issues that relates to you and I with your host, Alinko.
Welcome everyone to the number one community building show in the world. This is the Progressive Mind Show. We are very excited today. It looks like the energy today is different. I don't know, but I'm sure that is for a good reason. We are very pleased to be coming away this Wednesday, March 6th, April 6th. We just left March, so April 6th, 2022, and we will be continuing. We'll be having the conversation as we had in March, family. We're not necessarily extending the conversation into April, but this was necessary based off our last conversation. The family units impact on children development, child development. Today, we're going to be talking about trauma, and how it affects children's development, how it may have played out on a lot of us, even, and how we interact with people. It takes a village to raise children. It used to be a popular thing. It used to be a good thing. It used to be a thing in the past. But is that still holding today? And if it's not, should we try and bring it back? So we want to encourage you all to join us as we engage on this particular subject. Please share the feed if you're on Facebook and on YouTube. We are currently also live on Twitter, and then we are being carried by Afro Star radio station and online Afro radio station on the East Coast, and currently also being run cross-post. We are cross-posting on Afro Star as well. We will be taking the Captain Mike segment once we come back. We'll introduce our guest and get straight into the conversation. Before we do so, my co-host Michelle is right here. Michelle, how are you doing today?
I am well. How are you today? Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. Happy Wednesday to you.
Happy Wednesday to everybody. We'll take Captain Mike. When we come back, the show continues. Please stay with us. Make sure you share the feed as we listen to Captain Mike with the weather updates, weather, health, and fitness updates. Captain Mike, it's been a week since you updated us. We haven't had Chicago has been zigzag, but please give us the latest updates.
Well, it's kind of what you'd expect this time of year in Chicago. So nothing surprising right now. Midway Airport, we got 55 degrees. Some spotty showers here and there, overcast skies. It's going to be windy. Hang on to your hats. 20 miles an hour, gusting up to 30 miles an hour. So, and it's going to stay gusty for windy and gusty for the next couple days. So let's take a look. For the rest of tonight, we are going to get down to about 45 degrees, just a little isolated showers here and there. Tomorrow, windy, still gusty, windy, some isolated showery day. Same thing. Friday is going to get messy. High of 45, high of 40, low of 35. Possible wintry mix, and same into Saturday, where we may see a wintry mix of some rain and snow. Yes, snow still. Sunday, 55 degrees, low 35. Rain late into Monday. Off and on rain. But guess what? Temperatures are going to start increasing. The winds are going to move to the south. And we're going to see Monday into the 60s, low in the 50s. Same thing Tuesday and Wednesday, highs in the mid 60s, but it's going to be cloudy and rainy all week. So at least it gets a little bit warmer after Sunday. So going into sports and English Premier League, we have Burnley 3, Everton 2, and taking it to the health and fitness report. 5 ways to improve our eyesight from blackdoctor.org. Vision is one of our most important parts of and taking it to the health and fitness report. For one of the tips, take vitamins. Our eyes are very parts of the health and fitness. Vitamins A, C, and E. Those are very high in zinc and have good antioxidants that can prevent harmful conditions that can hinder your eyesight. Also, certain foods such as broccoli, red pepper, spinach, strawberries, sweet potatoes, salmon, and flax seeds are good with omega-3 oils, so are very good for your eyesight. 2, keep your hands clean. our eyesight is very sensitive to germs and infections, which we touch our eyes all the time. We don't even know we're doing it. Sometimes it's unconscious. 3, exercise. Obesity and diabetes can reduce your eye health. Too much sugar in your bloodstream can harm the walls of your arteries, which are very susceptible in your eyes. Very, very sensitive. 4, wear eyeglasses. Wear sunglasses if you have subscription eyeglasses. Wear those too, but wear sunglasses that block 99 to 100% of the UVA and UVB radiation. And 5, know your family's history. Is there glaucoma in your history? Are there other eyesight problems? Talk to your eye doctor and make appointments regularly. So with those tips, we're going to go back to you, Sina.
Thank you so much, Captain Mike. We usually try to get the updates regarding the airline industry, and then you used to give us that maybe 3, 4 months ago. Definitely things have probably reached their peak now. Any updates or reports on that?
Oh, absolutely. Domestically, we're pretty much back to where we were pre-pandemic. Internationally, there's still some spots here and there that require certain vaccinations. So if you're traveling internationally, make sure you check what the your destination has for you as far as their requirements for getting into the country as far as COVID. But right now, especially domestically, our numbers are back. We're doing what we were doing.
Good for you guys, man. And the job market has been picking up too. So, gradually we hope that things get better and better. Only thing we're struggling with is the gas price. And I think that is international. Who else has been hit hard with the gas price? Dr. KERRI, Dr. Lockhart, have you been experiencing, I don't know if you get chauffeured to work and back, or you ride a train? I don't know if you drive.
Well, I'm mostly working from home now, but whenever I have to fill up, it's about $90.
Yeah, it's
hitting me hard. I filled up today actually.
Yeah,
and I wanted to cry, but I was grateful I could. So, trying to find some gratitude in the moment.
Gas prices is killing everybody, and I think it's affecting airline tickets too. I don't know. But for some reason, people are still traveling. People are still flying domestically. They're going to Mexico. They're going to, all these nice vacation places. But I don't know. For folks that are driving on the streets and on the roads, we really feeling the pinch. Michelle, I don't know about you.
I mean, honestly, you guys, my gas, car gas bill has doubled, more than doubled. Just today, I too had to fill up, Dr. Lockhart, and I was at $50, and my gas tank is small, and I'm like, I'm usually full at 25. Literally double.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. I shed a couple tears too, because I could have been 2 gas tank fulls of gas instead of 1. So I definitely took everything out my trunk.
I think the only person who doesn't feel it at all is Captain Mike. I mean, he hardly drives. No.
I have 2 electric vehicles, so I don't even know what gas costs.
See what I'm saying?
We kind of
always
years ago.
What was that?
Yeah, we saw this coming years ago. So we got electric vehicle and we got the charger in our garage. So I just charge up at home and go.
Nice.
But you don't drive a lot. You're always flying, so I was assuming that you don't have to deal with gas prices. And yeah, I saw you in that Tesla, man. That Tesla is very smooth. So that's a cool ad for Tesla. If you have money, you should go in for a Tesla. It's the future. It's right. So I know, Dr. Attorney TAIWO, you probably own a Tesla, or working towards one. I don't know.
Yes, maybe working towards one.
No, but I'm sure you've been feeling the pinch too, right? With the gas.
Well, it's everywhere. I mean, when you are here, you work on budgets, and when things like this happen, they are not planned for. It has impact on your budget. Begin to take a quick look at your movement, your itinerary, and see that you respect what is going on. Lest you begin to fall short in some other areas which were not envisaged. So for me, it calls for. But I think that there's a lot of speculation that is as a result of the war in Ukraine,
Yes.
and that if that is settled, that things are likely to return to normal. I don't know how much that is true, but we are watching.
Yeah, that's what we are hoping for. Well, that said, regarding gas prices, if you're watching us and you want to share your gas price stories, some people have been shedding tears.
Send us your receipt, your gas receipt. I'd love to see some people send us some gas receipts and tag us. That would be great. If you guys could do that.
Commensurate about that.
Yes, let's do that. Dr. KERRI, Miss Lockhart, if you want to start off and maybe tag me if you have one.
I'm going to post it today and show you guys. Because I really was like, ouch, that was not part of the plan today.
Yeah. No, it's a real issue, and I heard Dr. Wilson has been helping people with gas and stuff like that. So, well, on the south side, kudos to him.
Awesome.
Kudos to him helping poor people to deal with it. Well, Captain Mike, thank you so much for the updates. We're looking forward to seeing you next week with similar or maybe something else. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing a great job. We look forward to seeing you. Have a wonderful evening, bro. Awesome. That was Captain Mike. We'll go dive right into the conversation this evening. Michelle,
yes.
What should we look out for? What should our audience expect this evening?
Well, I think we should expect a spinoff from last week's conversation. It was so good, and we had such a great response to it. I actually took notes. You know, one thing that you guys will learn about me is I'm a copious note taker and a nerd at heart. So I have my notes from last week's meeting or show, and I thought it would be great to kind of talk about some of the things that we talked about surrounding childhood trauma, you know, to kind of get our feet wet and remind us about what we talked about last week. I know, Dr. KERRI Lockhart, you mentioned adverse childhood experiences. You even used the acronym ACEs. And I would really like for us, even with you, Attorney TAIWO, to kind of really outline the tenets of what real childhood trauma looks like explicitly. Because I think in the Black community, especially in the African American community, when we have the generations of experience of inherited trauma from slavery, and then in present day, in our day-to-day relationships, our familial relationships, there may be some dysfunction there that we can't even see or identify because we've normalized that way of communicating our feelings or disdain or, you know, disapproval, right? And so it's normalized, and it can be a very difficult conversation to have or to even acknowledge that it was a traumatic experience, whether you want to accept it, right, or not. I've also seen a lot of times where those, you know, adverse experiences could be invalidated by trying to silence, you know, the person experiencing that trauma, or to downplay it or dilute it, to reduce it to something minimal, right? I think we talked about with Will Smith and his reaction to honor and protect his wife. And what you said too, Dr. Lockhart, last week is what one can see as a paper cut may be a gash for someone else, right? Understanding those trigger points and what causes that. And then lastly, Attorney TAIWO, you talked about mishandled. This is one of my favorite quotes. Right. Mishandled childhood results in, I think you said something along the lines of a tumultuous adulthood, right? Please correct me because it's not as eloquent as how you put it last week. But talking about that in the present day and how I know me being my age, I'm still impacted, right, by some of the experiences and shaped by those experiences of what I experienced as a child. And so I would really like to hear more on your perspective in that area as well, and how you're able to even identify it in our day-to-day relationships, and how we handle one another, and even in society at large.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was a very awesome intro and overview to from last week's show to today. So we would begin with Dr. Lockhart. I'm sure Michelle said a lot that you would like to piggyback off of. So please go ahead.
Yeah. So I think the first thing I would start and say is, generally we recognize that everyone has trauma. And I think a lot of times when people hear trauma, they think of those really traumatic but like violent things. So an assault of some type, or witnessing an assault or harm, physical harm to a family member or someone you love. And those are indeed trauma. But the other things that happen, we don't always recognize those as trauma. And it's important to be able to identify it, because without identifying it, then it can really challenge our thinking about being empathetic, or, really recognizing that we want to do something different. So that's the first thing. The second thing is recognizing that, for children, trauma can sometimes show up. It'll show up in two places. When we talk about the adverse childhood experiences, those are going to be traumatic events that happen. You see the results of that in adulthood. So they can have health issues and lots of, heart problems and, things like that. But it sounds like we want to talk about a little bit more, because those things are important. It's like, what happens with the development of children who are experiencing trauma? So I have a list pulled up here because I don't want to miss them. And some are obvious. First, I want to identify what are some of the common traumas that we can see, and the ones that are identified in the ACEs screening. So child abuse, emotional, physical, or sexual abuse; neglect, emotional or physical. And, we've seen that where police will arrive at a home and children are in a home that's in squalor. Parent with a mental illness. Obviously, some of these things are things you have no control over, right? You have a parent with a mental illness, that's a health condition that they didn't choose. Parent or household with a substance abuse issue, including alcoholism. Again, we know that alcoholism is a health issue. People are born with a genetic predisposition for that. Domestic violence, witnessing that as a child, having a family member or someone in the household incarcerated, parents divorcing or separating, and losing a parent or sibling in childhood. So those are the things that are considered, based on the ACEs questionnaire and study, are considered traumatic. However, in recent years, we've, recognized, and I'm sure all of us on this, platform have recognized, but the folks who studied ACEs recognize, racism, living in, being in an impoverished community. Those things are all traumatic. And so what we see for younger kids who are experiencing trauma, so whether that's, for example, neglect in the home or abuse in the home or witnessing abuse, it certainly can delay their developmental milestones. So just the normal things that we see kids progress through, when they talk, when they walk, when they start communicating, and, these social interactions that babies, toddlers, and younger children go through. But some of the more social emotional things we see, they can have difficulty making attachments with their caregivers. And then they can become, over time, hypervigilant to their environment. So they're always nervous and worried and on alert for things to happen, because that's what they've become accustomed to. So there's a host of things that in childhood that trauma can, result in. And then long term, we know that lots of health issues are associated with that as well, which we can talk about a little bit later.
Wow. Wow. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Dr. Lockhart. And for those that are watching, we missed the introduction. For those of you who just joined the show, Dr. Lockhart is also a speaker. She's an educator as well. We skip the intro because we know we already had them here, but she's a West Side Chicago native, and she attended the prestigious Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy in Aurora, Illinois, before matriculating at Northwestern University. She graduated with a BA in psychology and earned her a physician or medical physician degree. No, she became a physician at Southern Illinois University. So we would, based off, because we already started the show, so we just wanted to at least have you get a background of who Dr. Lockhart is. She's also a vice president of the Cook County Physicians Associations and holds a leading diversity, equity, and inclusion certification through Northwestern University. So she's also a member of the Delta Sigma. And we want to also go to Attorney TAIWO. Attorney TAIWO, you have heard a little bit from my my co-host Michelle, but Dr. TAIWO, before he speaks, is the Chief Executive Officer of Power Parenting Company. He pioneered social development law in Nigeria and arguably in Africa. He has written so many articles. He teaches parenting with UNICEF, SOS, and is the co-founder of S.A.F.E, S-A-F-E, for children who have been going through trauma, children who have suffered trauma across the globe. He's a consultant, researcher, and a facilitator, conference speaker, who has spoken around the globe, but he's been working a lot in Africa, Nigeria. Attorney TAIWO, once again, you're welcome. Again, just to give those who are just joined us a brief background of who you are. But go ahead, Attorney TAIWO.
Having me, let me commend you for your consistency, the commitment to make this show happen. I know that it takes a lot. I appreciate that, Dr. Lockhart. It's good to see you again. When I shared the platform with you last week, I loved the things that you said, and I look forward to having more conversations with you on this subject matter or other matters. Now, for me, I think that if we are talking about trauma and children, it is important that we do not take for granted that all of us understand who children are. You know, there's this misconception about children, particularly in Africa, thinking that children are an appendage of the parents. People think that children are just they're mini me and just smaller me. They think that children have no feelings and they're only going to begin to feel when they are grown up. So for now, we can do whatever we want to do with them. We can abuse them. We can do whatever we have to do because we are not able to create a link between the present and the future. We're not able to create the link between childhood and adulthood. And so when we're not able to do all of that, we do not understand that being young does not mean children are rehearsing for life. Life has started. Being young does not mean that life is going to start tomorrow. Whatever a child experiences today, cumulatively at the end of the day, becomes who the child is. And that's why we must ask ourselves the question, why are those years called formative years? You know, they are formative years. That's why science has now told us, which Maya Montessori also confirmed, that 80% of the personality of children are formed between age 0 and 6. 80% of the personality of children, who they are going to be, how they think, their worldview, are formed between age 0 and 6. That is huge. And that's why those years are called formative years. Maya Montessori says in these years, children possess what she called absorbent mind, a mind that absorbs everything. And when you absorb, pain does not have exhaust. Pain does not evaporate. Pain remains except it is treated. And that is why you see a 75-year-old man I read last week who committed suicide at 75. That's how you find people who have been married for 50-something years and they file for divorce. A bizarre case that I came across last week also of a woman who is 78, who has been married to the husband for close to 50-something years, put a gun on the husband, planned the husband's murder, and murdered him. They've been married, they have grandchildren, great-grandchildren. What will push the woman to do that? So I said that pain does not have exhaust. Pain has to be treated. Time does not heal anyone. And that is why we have to be careful how we treat children, because whatever we do to children does not only stay in their memory. This is what Montessori said. Montessori said, what you do to children don't stay in their memory, it stays in their soul. The soul is the seat of the mind, the will, and the emotion. That is where life is. A human being is a spirit who possesses a soul, who lives in the body. That is who a human being is. And all of these are complete even when the child is in the womb, not to talk of when the child is now born. So the child begins to experience all of this. And I think that when we talk about trauma, we need to, there are two ways to look at it. One, if you don't understand who a child is, that a child is a person of worth. Number two, that the child has a sense of judgment, is a reasoning being. Number three, that the child has the power of choices, even from when the child is in the womb, because the child is making choices in the womb, whether to breathe, whether to practice breathing or not to practice it, whether to turn when it is time for the child to turn, or not to turn. Those are choices that the child is already making in the womb, not to talk of when the child is born. So for me, ultimately, it is important while we study childhood very well. When we study childhood, we understand childhood, it will help us to know how to treat childhood, because childhood is a delicate entity, and raising children is one of the most difficult responsibility that anyone can choose to endeavor to take on. And that's why last week, one of our guests said she wasn't looking forward to raising children, having children, and she might, but she was not looking forward to it. And the truth of the matter is that is the point everybody must move from. The point of view of asking myself the question is not, see, you don't have children because society says you should. You don't embark on this journey of raising children because you think you are old enough. You are never old enough for anything. You're only prepared enough. You see, you cannot, Captain Mike did not become a pilot, if he's one, because he was old enough.
He's one.
He didn't just show up, at an airline and says, I'm 52. And because of that, I want to give me a plane to fly. And they say, why should we give you? He said, I'm 52. I've been in Chicago for how long? Just give me a plane to fly. No. If he tries that, they are going to attribute what he's doing to a mental health issue. And if he does not leave the place on time, doctors are going to be invited. So how come when it comes to managing things that are delicate, like human lives, we just think that all we need to do is to be 27, 28, 29, old enough, then we begin to raise children. It's something we have to look at carefully, and I think that's where I want to start the conversation from today. Thank you.
I love it. Something we have to look at carefully, and I really want you to continue from there, because whilst you were talking, my next question I was preparing to ask you is, so as we count, people go, we have a system, we have a counseling system. If you're going to get married, you go through counseling and all of that. But in the culture of the doctrine of churches, you don't see that setup, counseling for parenting, right? So that being said, you think that I don't know if there's something you're already propagating in churches or in communities that we should institute that and begin to train, teach people, because we, like you said, we just have kids. People just have kids. And so per what you have said, has this now become a necessity that we go through that? Because child trauma is serious. And I'll share a story that just happened yesterday. I'll share that story. But if you want to respond to that real quick.
Okay, please. So for me, in neuro-linguistic programming, it is said that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. I think the skill for parenting begins from recognizing who you are as a person. I suffered untold childhood abuse, which resulted in childhood trauma. You know that trauma is a depressing experience. It's a disturbing experience. It's an experience, it's a consequence of an act or an omission. So you don't just become traumatic from the womb, except maybe it's medical trauma, whatever. But when it comes to the kind of trauma we are talking about here, it is as a result of an act, an omission. So what happens is that we treat children the way we see them the way we were seen growing up. So for me, the first test we need to put forward is, how were you raised? Have you asked critical questions about how you were raised? I was not raised. I was erased. Because you see, to raise a child is a conscious effort. To destroy a child is also a conscious effort. It's only that the conscious effort to destroy a child does not need your good intention. You may have the best of intention. You want to do the best for the child. Once you don't have the necessary attitude, which is number one, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the skill, you are going to make a shipwreck of children. So when I attained adulthood at the age of 18, I was yet a child, because you see, becoming an adult is not a function of age alone. There's what is called psychological age. There's what is called emotional age. There's what is called another type of age that is different from the calendar age, the number. And that is why somebody was assessed, and they said, though he was 71 years old, his mindset was the mindset of a 9-year-old. So for me, I think the first question we need to ask people who want to settle down in court, who want to begin to have children, is, how were you raised? How was your childhood? If your childhood was messed up, have you received any help? Have you subjected yourself to any form of therapy? Those are fundamental questions we need to ask. Now, it is on those fundamental questions that we now put training, because at the end of the day, if I'm not in the right frame of mind, it doesn't matter what I'm trained to do. So the first thing is the question of attitude. And that is one thing that we're not addressing today. We don't address the question of your attitude towards life. How do you see life? How do you see human beings? How do you see children? How do you see, how do you even see women? How do you see men? These are fundamental questions that we ask, and you're only able to respond to those questions according to how you were treated. If you were ill-treated, there's every tendency that you want to ill-treat other people. If you were ill-treated, there's every tendency that even though you are not, even though you are ill-treating people, you are not even aware that it is ill-treatment because you don't know better. That's why I say many adults cannot deal with children. Why? Because though they were children, they never experienced childhood. You cannot give what you don't have. Since you never experienced childhood, for every time you were trying to be a child, you were punished. So when you become an adult also, for every time a child is trying to be a child, you punish the child and you feel justification. Honestly, you are honest about it. That this is how I was treated. And there's this trick. I was treated that way. I've become who I have become. And the question is, maybe you become a doctor. Maybe you become a president. That you are a president does that mean you are sane? That somebody is a president does not mean the person is sane. Richard Nixon was the president of America. He wasn't secured. I mean, he was the president. He had a term running, but was still spying on another party. Now, he should have been okay. His name would have gone down as one of the presidents of America, but that was not enough for him. So that someone is a president of the country, dear me, Dada, in Africa was a president of the country, he slaughtered his people.
Adolf Hitler.
Adolf Hitler was the president of the nation. So that somebody is a president or is a leader or whatever does not mean the person is sane. And those are the deceptions there. Yes, I was ill-treated, but I have become. It is not who you have become. It is who you are. Because who you are is more critical than who you have become. Because what you become is what you do. Who you are is the foundation of your existence and your meaning.
You could be the best surgeon in the world, but be mean to your children and be mean to your wife, be mean to your family members, be mean to your workers, right? So that's basically what, oh man, powerful. I know Dr. Lockhart, you've been nodding. I'm sure you want to contribute, but Michelle, I don't know if you have any follow-up for Dr. Lockhart or TAIWO.
I actually have a lot. Attorney TAIWO, you said a lot. And I was going to ask, do you think that adults forget what it's like to be children? But I think that you made a very powerful statement where you said that although they were once children, they didn't experience childhood. So they can't give what they don't have, right? So I thought that was a very powerful, insightful statement. And then for you, Dr. Lockhart, I did have a question. So earlier in the conversation, we talked about how Taiwo mentioned the formative years are between the ages of 0 and 6. If you do have a degree in psychology, I know you're familiar with personality disorders. No.
Completely forgot about my bachelor's in
Yeah,
psychology.
I mean, you have a degree in psychology.
Been so long.
But I know you still use it, daily as we do. I'm just curious. So those formative years between the ages of 0 and 6 years old, would you say that from a psychological standpoint that may be the time frame where a personality disorder can also be, take place if their personality is formed during that time?
But before you
No.
respond to that, I was also thinking about trauma. Like, what is the Attorney Taiwo explained it, but you also being in that field, I mean, you want to give us your definition per your line of work, what trauma is?
So the way we look at trauma, and the way I was taught about trauma is, there's, like kind of this stress continuum, and at one end is like, healthy stress. And then in the middle of that is toxic stress, and then there's trauma. And most of us can do okay, with the right supports and, scaffolding, right? With stress and toxic stress. We can navigate that fairly okay. But when you don't have those in place, then that's when things kind of move over to that other side of trauma. And so that gets, embodied in the body and in the brain as, we have our primitive brains are, prepared, when we were back hunting and gathering and all that stuff, to be prepared to respond to a threat, right? So if, there's a tiger in front of you, your body kicks into fight and flight mode so that you are not using your blood to digest food. It goes to your extremities, and your eyes get dilated so you can see things close to you and know what's going on, and keep yourself safe. Well, when you have been traumatized, that area of the brain gets, when you have a trauma and then you're activated by that same area of the brain also lights up. And so your brain sees that as a physical threat, and the brain doesn't know the difference. So, you're being yelled at, and now you're 16 and it happened when you were little, and you don't like that, or you're being spanked and the person is someone at school is yelling at you and responding to you in the same way, and your brain is activated in that same space of like, okay, I need fight or flight. I have to do one or the other. And then, the person may just be talking to you, and then all of a sudden you go off and start beating them up because your brain has told you this is a physical threat. This is just like before. You need to respond and protect yourself. And so that's, trauma is, this over time, this level of stress that becomes toxic and then not addressed with any kind of support and scaffolding. Now, again, that's just like, the trauma that we can experience from day to day, or emotional trauma, very different from obviously physical traumas. Those are, obviously very clear. Violence or abuse or harm or assault, sexual assault, things like that, are also types of trauma, but they encode in the brain in the same way. And so you have something that happens that triggers it, and the response to people looking on will be very disproportionate to the thing that happened. So it's why someone can be in a store and going off on the person at the register because they spoke to them with just the dismissive tone, just enough that it put them back in that same space when maybe they felt powerless to whatever event happened then, whether it was when they were a child and it's not even recognized by them, but they were constantly neglected, or they were an adult and someone treated them, that way. And so that's what I think is, as we, I know respond to the question that you asked to Michelle. I think that's where the struggle comes in, and recognizing what can be traumatic to our children versus, what we think is fine. I hear a lot of times, adults are saying, well, for example, spanking is one of the big ones that I talk about. And most of my colleagues, when I was seeing patients, that we talked about with families, and from a very non-judgmental way, because from a cultural standpoint, that is a part of some cultures, our culture for sure. But the reality is, what we know about spanking, even if it's not at the level of, physical abuse, we know that long term there are increased risk of substance abuse, increased risk of mental health disorders like anxiety, depression, and antisocial behavior, which many people think being antisocial is being home and not wanting to be around people, but that's criminal behavior. And so while, some people are like, I'm fine, I was spanked. The question is really, are you fine? I love, that TAIWO said, pain doesn't go away, and it doesn't. Time does not heal pain. We have to take some active steps to heal it and mitigate pain, particularly pain associated with trauma, because if it's not mitigated or addressed, it'll be discharged. That's just how that works. It's like energy. Energy is not created or destroyed, right? Like there's no new energy coming into this planet. So pain is not going to go anywhere. We have to address it and heal that if we want to see, these reactions, happening less and harming one another less. To the second question, so I have a bachelor's in psychology. That is very surface level psychology. So I'll be honest, I'm not sure that I'm qualified to speak about when personality disorders would develop. I seem to remember that they are, I don't want to give incorrect information, but I think those are there. Like, I don't know that I think you are born with that propensity, but I don't want to quote that. If there are any psychologists on Facebook watching, you can type it in the comments and let us know how that comes into play, because I don't want to misspeak. But I will say it certainly can affect things like anxiety and depression, many of the other mental health disorders that are really common. If you have a child who is in an environment and being reared in an environment that is not safe, that's not have some consistency. And this has nothing to do with income. I want to be very clear. The ACEs study was done on upper middle class white people. And the majority of those folks tested positive for the ACEs. I think it's 10 questions. Like I just looked at this, refreshed my memory yesterday. I think it's 10 questions, and you need 3 to have an increased risk later of several health issues. And I did want to actually go through those, because I think it's helpful for people to recognize what things are associated with having these exposures in childhood. So having an adverse childhood event can raise your risk later in life for pregnancy as a teen, alcoholism, smoking, misuse of prescription drugs and illicit drug use, depression, heart disease, liver disease, intimate partner violence. It has STIs on here, but it's not like having ACEs, you're more at risk for getting that. You just will engage in behavior that's a lot more risky and increase your risk. And death by suicide. So all of these are, things that it's that pain and that trauma that's not mitigated. So it gets incorporated in the body in many ways. And so it's not a minor thing. The last point I wanted to speak to was, I don't know that it's, we assess ACEs in our office for every newborn family who comes in. They fill out an ACE questionnaire. And if you score positive, then we connect you with our social worker to start to do some work so that the parents, because the questionnaire is for the parents, and so the parents can, have access to some support to prevent from passing on some of those behaviors, right? But I think what I've come to think about all of this is that there's so many of us who don't know enough about trauma. I mean, even I'm still learning a lot. And I think if you are charged with leading people in any capacity, if you're a teacher, if you are a physician, a provider in any health field, if you are a pastor, that there needs to be some training around what it looks like to be trauma informed, what it looks like to be trauma responsive, and then, trauma aware. Because I think if you have a pastor who is going to, provide advice for families, but they also don't have the awareness of how to be trauma informed, then they could potentially perpetuate some of the same harms and kind of enable it. And so,
Awesome. Awesome. Wow. Thank you so much. I don't know, Dr. Attorney Tayo, while she was talking, I don't know if there's a comment or in her submissions, something that you wanted to respond to or add on. Please feel free to do so quickly.
Well, when you talk about actions or omissions that engender trauma, that lead to trauma the way Dr. Lockhart had described it, we talk about abuse. Many years ago, I began to say that I think when we call something an abuse, we are so used to it that we don't even look at the implication. I believe that child abuse, which is one of the things that lead to trauma, which Dr. Lockhart has mentioned some of them: physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect. And sometimes, again, things that we don't even consider to be abusive, like neglecting a child, like ignoring a child, like making a jest, making a child the butt of a joke, and the child is not able to complain, and the child complains, you say, but it's a joke, mommy is joking with you, daddy is joking with you. All of those things that destroy children. But I found something in Microsoft Encounter, 2009. And I want to read to you how they describe these experiences, what it takes from human beings. When I read that many years ago, it opened my eyes to the reason why we need to prevent, because I think at the end of the day, we must be looking in the direction of prevention after we have been able to define what trauma is, what are the causes, and what can we begin to do, to ensure, starting from ourselves, to ensure that we stop this trend, this menace. Because what has happened is that what is supposed to be a menace has been normalized. We have now accepted it as the way things are done, and it ought not to be so. That is why conversations like these are critical. That is why when we couldn't have this conversation last week, and we decided to have it this week, for me, it's a big thing, because it's a conversation that we have to have. But let me read to you what Microsoft Encounter describes as dehumanization, which is abuse. It says, to make someone less human. To make somebody less human by taking away his or her individuality, the creative and interesting aspect of his or her personality, or his or her compassion and sensitivity towards others. That's what abuse does. You made the person less human. To make somebody less human by taking away his or her individuality, that is what makes him different. The creative and interesting aspect of his or her personality, or his or her compassion and sensitivity towards others. Once you take this away from a human being, that person is dead while still living. And that is why when we understand the impact of the kinds of way we treat children, the impact of it, we make them less human. We take away their individuality. We take away the creative and the interesting part of them. We take away their compassion towards others. That's why somebody goes somewhere, brings out a gun, and guns down 54 people or so, and it's not feeling anything. It's not feeling anything about it. Because when you trace it back, you will see that this person is dealing with both post-traumatic disorder, is dealing with traumatic disorder, is dealing with a whole lot of things. So I think what we are discussing today is very critical, And I will be interested in us beginning to look at the end of the day, how do we prevent this? I haven't known the impact of it on our children and the society at large, because at the end of the day, when we abuse children, when we neglect them, when we make them the butt of the joke, when we messed up their mind, we redirect their minds onto what? Onto destruction. And what happens is that it is not the child alone that suffers this. As a matter of fact, the society suffers more in terms of creativity. Now, one of the challenges that Africa has is that to a very large extent, we have become the world's largest liability. We consume what we do not produce, we produce what we do not consume, and we don't pay attention to how we raise our children. So if we don't pay attention to how we raise our children, we are just going to continue to be who we have been. We've collected aid from everywhere. That's why Ambisa Moyo wrote. He said, dead aid. Why dead aid is not the pathway for Africa. So, but where do we start from? The nations of the future are the nations of children. Those are the nations that pay attention to their children concerning how they are treated, how they are raised. Now, please don't get me wrong. There's no nation that does not have its own issue. There are no continents where children are not traumatized, where children are not abused. It's just that the way it is addressed from nation to nation differs. Thank you.
I had a ton of questions, but after I'm just hypnotized by what you're saying. So I'm like zombie, So I don't know, Michelle, if you have any questions.
Yes, I was actually just thinking, like, do children really have rights, right? Even as it transposes to different groups or different communities. I was actually watching a video a couple days ago about how some children, are used disposably, on for the different markets and for different reasons and things of that nature. And just how you talked about what demonization is and how you reduce that child's soul to less than human when you do that. And just really being, us being aware, of that and understanding that children, even though they depend on us, they do have rights. They do have importance. They do have value. And like you said, they are people. They're just little people. I'm a parent, and I too have, just as a parent, every day interacting with my child, I have to respect his autonomy in a sense, and respect his individuality and what makes him unique, and not push my push my own desires on him, right? And so it's just really interesting to hear how you could have a child and not love them to the point where you would want to neglect them or strip them, of just what makes them a person. It's very unfortunate, but I would like to talk a little bit more about now, how does that how can we mitigate that? We talked about prevention. You said prevention is key, right? So what are some of the things that we can do, even as adults, to kind of mitigate or offset the ramifications of that trauma that they experience? Does therapy help? Does self-care help? Like, what are those strategies to kind of help families work through these issues?
Okay, I think therapy works. But you see, this is how I define therapy. I don't think therapy obliterates your experiences or makes you forget about them. Therapy helps you to do that which you could have been doing if you were not abused. That's not the fact that you were abused. So you are taught coping skills, coping mechanism of how to handle issues of life despite your experience. Because therapy, whatever therapy, because therapy is not does not come with spare parts to the soul, to the affected psyche, to the affected part of your brain, your body, and all of that. Therapy does not come with spare part. I think what therapy deals with is coping mechanism. Whether it is medicinal, that's why if it is medicine, you are dealing with depression, it's continuous for a long time. If it is talk therapy, it is also a process. It's a process. So for me, therapy works. But one thing we need to first do is to, I think, so I experienced a very terrible childhood. And please note, when I say that with every sense of responsibility. I'm not trying to diss my parents. I'm not trying to say that my parents were evil people, they were wicked people. No, they also were products of their own childhood, so they could not give what they did not have. So when they began to raise me, they raised me the way they were raised. As a matter of fact, because they were not raised, they also did not raise me. So I was just passing time. So I lost my virginity at the age of 6. That's the year I started primary school, because my mother would go to the market, leave me with a woman who was a neighbor, and this neighbor would strip me naked, do with a 6-year-old boy what a woman should do with a man. And before I knew it, my sexuality was awoken. I was messed up sexually. Before I understood, what sexuality was and what it meant, what I was supposed to do with it or not do with it, my introduction to my sexuality was through abuse. Secondly, my father beat me. When he wanted to beat me, he would tie my hands, he would tie my legs, he would strip me naked. He would give me strict source of the cane, I would go and sit down, and that could go on for half a day. And I'm 52 years old, I experienced all of those things. I experienced those things till I was a teenager. Now, if I open my back right now, the marks are still there. It would have been okay if those bruises, those marks were only on my back, they're in my psyche. I'm messed up. I'm messed up in a way that I cannot, beyond what I can explain. I mean it. So I was beaten. And you see, for my father to tie me, what were the things that I saw tied growing up? I saw goats tied. I saw rams tied. I saw chicken tied. So if chickens were worthless and goats were worthless and they were tied, and I was also tied, it means we were the same. That was how I recorded it. Now my mother would look at me and say, "You are a useless child, only comparable to a dog." My mother would look at me and said, "The pain I went through giving birth to you was a loss. You are a useless child." And psychology says, for every wrong word you say to a child, you need 17 to correct it. For the first 18 years of my life, I was hearing the wrong word. Now, no, if a neighbor reported me to my parents, the words of the neighbor was more important than mine. I was never heard. My father died at the age of 82 in 1989. My father, I was 39 years old. My father and I never had a conversation. Now, that is true. I'm not trying to exaggerate. My father never had a conversation with me. He never instructed me on any issue of life. So, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, I was 10 years old when my teacher looked at me in primary school, elementary school, and said, "From today, this TAIWO, call him Satan, is the one who killed the boy." I was playing with my friend, Dada. I was 10 years old. Now, I'm 52 now. That's 42 years ago. My friend, we were climbing a tree, and it was Dada's turn to climb that tree. We were playing during break, and Dada fell, the branch on which Dada was standing broke, and the branch went straight into his tummy, and Dada, lost consciousness. He was rushed to the hospital. 3 days after, news came to school that Dada had passed away, had passed on. And my teacher looked at me and said, because that boy died when we were playing, that I was the one who killed him, that everybody should call me Satan. And so at the end of the day, by the time I was getting to secondary school, I was an exact replica of everything that was predicted. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. I was told I was useless, I behaved useless. I was told I would amount to nothing, I didn't think I was going to amount to anything. I was playing, and now the challenge is, you give a child a name, the child was living up to the name, you are not surprised. Then I was again punished for living up to the names that I was being called. It was double jeopardy for me, And so for me, getting into adulthood at the age of 18, being sent to the university was an opportunity for me to finally demonstrate who I was, a completely irresponsible human being. And I did a whole lot of things that time will fail me to begin to talk about. But for me, at the age of 27, that's why I became a Christian. I gave my life to Christ, In my room, it was February 16, 1997. And that is when the change journey began for me. And please know, when I tell you that the change journey began for me, it wasn't on a bed of roses. It wasn't because now that I confessed Christ and, magic happened. No, I began to understand first, my identity was corrected. Who are you? Now, because I began to separate myself from how I was treated as a child, because I told you, if chickens were tied and I was tied, I believed I was worthless like the chicken. If goats were tied and I was tied, I believe I was worthless like the goats. So when I became a Christian, the first thing I began to understand going through the Bible is the fact that I'm made in the image and the likeness of God. And it was tough for me to believe, but I struggled, and I began to believe that. And that was the beginning of my own journey. And so I began to become my own therapist through studying scriptures. And I now developed 5 major steps that I, studied my own life, how I came out of the impact of abuse. And please, when I tell you I came out, I use that word cautiously, because it's a lifetime commitment. My default was damaged. So today, I don't live by my default. I live by my conscience. I try as much as possible. So I try not to be absent-minded. I try to bring everything to my conscience. But unfortunately, the subconscious controls the conscious. So I've been fighting the battle in the last 23 years, 24 years, 25 years, trying to impose what I now know in my subconscious that was almost damaged to a point of no repairs for 27 years. So that's the battle I've been fighting. So when I meet people, I'm able to analyze them. I'm able to look at them. And I'm able to, there's nothing in me that judges any other person who is going through stuff. Because I'm going through my own stuff. I've conquered some things. I've overcome some things. Sometimes I suffer some relapse. I pick myself up again. I keep moving. But the truth of the matter is that it is because of my own experience growing up that I dedicate myself to the things that I do today. Because I know firsthand, I know the things that occur to me in my mind. When you say take away the creative part of a person, my creativity was stolen. So for me, creativity, for some people, creativity comes to them naturally. For me, it does not come to me naturally. I first need to deal with the fact that if you bring this idea, will it be accepted or will it not be accepted? If it's not accepted, how are you going to feel? I need to deal with all of that before I go back to say, no, whether it is accepted or it's not accepted, I need to think about the idea. I need to bring it up. Now, all of these are happening in my subconscious. Sometimes I get rid of it. I realize this is the reason why I've not done the things that I said I wanted to do. I realize the fact that the greatest person I disappoint most is not my wife. It's not my children. The people I disappoint most is myself, because there are many promises I've made to myself that I'm not able to keep. And when somebody is angry with me that I'm not able to keep promise to him, I say, look at me. You don't know how many promises I make to myself on a daily basis that I break. If only you know how many things I've said I will not do, how many things I've said to myself that I've broken. I'm the one, the person who is disappointed most. In any relationship is myself, because I have a relationship with myself and I disappoint myself most of the time. And when I disappoint people, I try to let them understand that, look, I should love my neighbor as myself. I disappoint myself many times. And so for me, because it's a journey of a lifetime, I keep warning. I keep talking to parents. I keep encouraging them. Whatever you can do, don't duplicate your errors in your children. For the sake of the fact that you want to bring children to this world, if you knew you were not properly raised, something was missing in your childhood, you may not be able to fix it all. Make up your mind to do something.
Wow. Okay, thank you so much for sharing. And a lot of things that you said I relate to. I was beating mercilessly a lot. I have a mark to date. It's on my wrist. It was through beating. Actually, it's on the left. It was through beating. I still have it. And I remember it vividly. I see it right now. The moment that led to it, how it happened, the blood that was oozing out, and how I had to go get help, and how I had to get help and get it treated. And I remember my dad also beating me one day. So my dad had a garden and I would be the one. I think before that was before I hit 10. I think maybe 7. So 7-year-old kid, I'll go come out from school, elementary school. Before I even eat, I have to go to my dad's garden. That was about another 15, maybe 15 minutes walk, some couple miles. And it wasn't, you go through a certain, even the way to get there. So I'll get there and water his gardens. So he had this, we call it a garden fork. So it's an iron, and it coils down. It looks like this, but it's long iron, right?
I know it.
And I think I don't know what happened. Maybe I went to play soccer. I didn't. The cutoff come to come home is 6 p.m. So if you play soccer and you don't come home before 6 p.m., trouble. So I think it was that, or I didn't water the gardens one time, or maybe I watered some of the garden and left something. I remember my dad beating me with that iron rod. Imagine a coiled iron rod, and he beat me until it became straight. Like,
Wow.
yeah. The iron rod, that coiled thing became straight. Like I remember, and that beating, you see, they beat you to the point where you can't even cry, right? And you have nowhere, you can't turn nowhere. There's nowhere to turn to. So you were just there taking this beating, and it's coming everywhere. Like to be funny enough, something that you shared, you said your dad didn't sit down to tell you, to like train you, right, to teach you about how to handle this. You know how some fathers will train you
Yes.
and give you life lessons. I don't remember that about my dad. But what I remember clearly are these moments, these abusive moments, or maybe a huge knock on your head, or a slap to your face, or he calling you names. There was a name that he would call me, the friend, people in the community would like diss me and laugh me with, And I'll say this. I mean, I'll keep that name. But these were names. I mean, these were things that I also remember of my dad. And he'll be nice to other people, but for some reason, me, I was there was no love. It was like I was a target for no reason. I was a small boy. I was young. I think I can go on and on, right? When it comes to some of the things that you shared, and the name calling, and you wonder, why would anyone do to a child, right? Do this to a child. And at the time, you would think, well, it's fine. That's your father. Africans, you can't say nothing. That's your father. That's Ronaldo. So you can't say nothing. You sleep and you wake up and you hope that next time it doesn't happen, right? And you were so scared to commit to commit the next mistake, right? And so in your quest to be correct, you make mistakes because you're a child and you're fumbling, and you become kind of numb to it or used to it. And I wouldn't stop playing soccer. I have to play. I'm a child, I have to, I play soccer. And so when I'm coming home after 6, I already know it's going to happen. It's
You're
going to
ready.
go down. So I'm preparing my body for it, and it's going to happen. You get beaten with high heels and everything. So it's true. I can relate, man. And like you said, it takes, and I always tell people that the childhood that I had and the man that I have become, it had to be God. It had to be God, because I know that I have a show called The Progressive Mind Show, from a man, or a guy who had such that kind of childhood, right? My mom was there, but I had to grow up. I had to support my mom. I had to be a breadwinner at a very young age. And I've grown up to become this man, and I think the way I think, and I want to be there for people, and I want to be there for people's well-being. And I don't think that is because of what I suffered. I think that God changed me. I'm going to church, and in just maybe just listening to my mom or watching my sisters grow and just kept being there for them, and a whole lot of factors kind of molded it. But I think I also committed myself to, being a good Christian, or just following God, right? Just listening to the positive things that I hear from church, right? And then just taking God's word and replacing God's word with those negative words that I was hearing. And you hear from everywhere, from teachers, teachers, African teachers, they tell you all kinds of things, right?
Mhm.
So So you were right, and again, I think we can share these stories all evening, and but we're still talking about trauma and its impact on children's development. If you have a child, please take note from what Dr. Attorney Taiwo and Dr. Lockhart is sharing this evening. Everything you do to your child has a consequence. If it's good, keep doing the good thing. But please, the words we use on the child and how we treat them affects us. Is it safe to say, Dr. Lockhart, I know you might want to say something, but let me ask the two of you. Is it safe to say that, per what you have discussed so far and what you've shared so far, a lot of grown-ups or people that are grown now, a lot of their actions is connected to how they were treated when they were children? Is it safe to say that, like, maybe majority of people's actions now is connected to that? Let's hear from Dr. Lockhart. We haven't heard from you in a while, so if you want to respond to it.
Before I answer that, I just want to thank both of you for sharing your, those are really hard stories. I can imagine. And so I just appreciate you being, open to share that, because I think someone reminded us in the chat that it's Child Abuse Awareness Month. And I think, hearing those stories, there may be parents who don't realize that what they're doing is so harmful. And I think it's important to hear from, you two, men who are doing, amazing things in your community, in our community, and how much that affected you, especially for our Black men, because I think sometimes there's this idea that you have to be harsh to prepare, our children for the world, but it's harmful. So I just thank you all for sharing those stories,
Thank you.
those hard stories.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, certainly there's, something to be said for adults potentially having some of these experiences in childhood. I think, anytime we're talking about traumatic experiences and how we are showing up in our lives, it can be anytime. Someone absolutely could have a whole and healthy childhood, but have a really, traumatic experience with someone close to them, a friend, but I think what's really important is to highlight the first place our children learn how to interact with the world, what love looks like, how to navigate, big emotions are at home. And how we respond to that, how we respond to our own, really tells our children what's right. And so I think what you both really highlighted, I think, was, the answer to the question Michelle asked. One of the answers about how do we, mitigate it. It's starting with us, the adults in their lives, and, aiming to do better, and then doing everything we can to do that. If we don't address our own trauma, we don't heal the things that happen to us, whether the intentions of adults in our lives or however the trauma happened were good intentions, the impact is what it was. And so starting with recognizing our own areas of pain and addressing that, because without doing that, it's hard to not perpetuate that harm. And so, for parents and adults listening who are charged with rearing children, if you're feeling, upset now and feeling like, that's, I don't do that, I don't beat my kids, I just spank them, or, however you might be feeling, I think the first place that will help all of us is really asking, why am I responding this way to whatever it might be, to my, kid crying, to my kid getting in trouble at school, to this conversation that I'm listening to right now. Why is my response this way? And continue to ask why. Oftentimes that requires working with, a helping professional who has training in trauma, because not all therapists lie. Oftentimes that requires work. Oh, there's an echo, sorry. not all therapists are trained, with a lot of significant trauma background. And so I think what you both really powerfully demonstrated is what happens when you heal your trauma. You can show up in the world in ways that you want to be, because it's not a foregone conclusion because children experience, their parents divorcing or a loss of a parent. Again, some of those things we can't control, but the main thing, if nobody remembers anything we say tonight, or I say, I should say, we know that connection mitigates trauma. And so if your child is, your husband or your wife, your partner passes away, how do you help your child not have long lasting harm, harm from that and trauma? You connect with them. If you have had a bad day and you come home and you're yelling and you are like, I wasn't my best self, you connect with them,
Right. So would you say, Attorney TAIWO, I'll have you respond to that, but would you say that, yes, maybe a lot of people in this world today do what they do as a result of their upbringing?
Yes.
Okay.
Why I would
Attorney TAIWO, I'd like to I will have you respond fully, but Dr. Lockhart, is that a fair statement to make?
Yeah. I mean, unless you really take some steps to unlearn what you've learned, you're going to perpetuate those same behaviors.
Okay. Michelle, what do you think? I wanted to take us a quick break, but before we go on that break, Michelle, what do you think?
First of all, I agree with Dr. Lockhart. I just wanted to say, for you all to be so bold to share your story so transparently is very refreshing and very insightful. I was just going to say that gathered from here, and I too am a healing adult as well. My childhood wasn't always the best either. I can kind of relate to some things that were spoken here tonight as well. But I personally would have to tell myself, and I think I'm hearing this from the collective, that it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Yeah.
It is your responsibility, right? And so I tell that to myself. No, it's not my fault that this happened, but it is my responsibility if I want a better quality of life for myself and for my child, right? And so I think taking responsibility does not mean that you're taking on the responsibility of why you experienced that trauma, but you are taking the responsibility to take control of your life and manage it and not allow it to manage you, right?
Absolutely.
So I thought that was amazing. So thank you.
That was very powerful, Michelle. Thank you for sharing. We'll take a break. When we come back, the Progressive Mind Show continues. Please keep sharing the feed as we try to build our communities. These are some of the salient discussions that we need to have. We're live on Facebook and on YouTube, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You're watching myself, Alinko, and my co-host, Michelle. We shall be right back after this.
I don't want to hear you say, I don't want to hear you say you did with another man.
If you're looking for some of this clothes, you can send an email to Mariam Insia 6767 Their Instagram is Sweet Sales. Facebook is also Sweet Sales. If you're looking for African prints and all this beautiful African dresses, clothing, shoes, they are located in Texas. We shall take this quick break. Next quick break. When we come back, the show will continue.
There is a crowd.
Aglo Bolingbrook Lighthouse is a network of caring women We are a dynamic global movement with a single mission to see God's purpose fulfilled on earth as it is in heaven. Our mandate is every nation touched and every heart changed for God. We invite you to our prayer meeting every Saturday and breakfast meeting held every last Saturday of the month from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. via Zoom meeting. For more information, please contact Dickness Rebecca Modi at 630-297-1471 or Reverend George Ofe-Ado, our advisor, at 630-414-9505. We look forward to having a refreshing time with you in the Lord. Thank you and stay blessed.
We're back on the show. This is the Progressive Minds. Here is where we build our community. We want to remind all our audience that it's coming on the 4th of June, or June 4th. In Ghana, we say the month, the day before the month, but here is the month for the day. So adjusting. It's June 4th, 2022. We're going to have the exchange ceremony. One event that we are all looking forward to. The exchange ceremony started in 2019. Is basically the coming together of the African diaspora to celebrate our humanity and our culture. This year is going to be special. We have our very, very own special personality, Reverend Jesse Jackson, the only Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. We're going to be honoring him in a very special way, in a very special African traditional way. This is going to be a huge, huge surprise and a huge one for the African diaspora. So mark your date. June 4th is gonna be at All Day Affair. Technically, All Day Affair starting from 4 to 10 p.m. CST. Again, watch out for the Progressive Minds social media page. Will be coming up. This flyer will be updated. All our special guests and the honorees and the cultural fashion show, the cultural dancers from all the African diaspora. We will be updating this website. Our partners, the United Africa Organization, Global Institutes. We have GPNA, Bantu Fest. Bantu Fest is one of our partners. And so just watch out for a very exciting moment, a very exciting day on June 4th. And so please mark your calendars, invite friends, and tell friends about it. Very soon, you're going to be seeing more updates. We're going to be playing some videos of the past show. And it's playing some videos of the past event in 2019. Michelle, this one's going to be very exciting. I'm looking forward to it. I know you are doing a lot of work with the branding and the promotion. Great job so far, Michelle.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to plan something so special, not just for the honorees, but just for the community that we serve. I'm really excited about the details that we've been planning, dedicatedly planning every week with the team, and I really just can't wait to show Chicago what we have created.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Lockhart and Attorney TAIWO, you guys are automatically invited. And please share the information. We'll be sending you more materials to put out in your network. The early bird ticket is out. If you go on Eventbrite and you type the exchange ceremony, it pops up. You want to get your early bird ticket. Get it now because it's going to go very, very fast. So just mark your calendars. This one is going to be exciting, very, very exciting. We will take a few comments from our Facebook feed. All right, Michelle, I think we have some comments coming through, Michelle, and then we'll go to our Attorney TAIWO.
So we have a comment from Rebecca Madi. Rebecca is the show. A big shout out to you all. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for watching. Mike LA, great panel. Thank you so much, Mike, for tuning in. And Rebecca had another comment. That's why the Bible says, train a child the way he should go. And when he grows up, he will not depart from it. Right. I think that we do kind of, even if the abusive patterns can also be, a training that we can repeat if we're not careful. And I think that's what we're talking about here today is prevention and correcting and unlearning that abuse.
Absolutely.
Cheryl Jenkins Rainey. Thank you, Dr. Lockhart.
Thank you, Cheryl, for chiming into the show. We really appreciate it.
Yes. Shytrina Bracy, I wish so many people would tune in because a lot of people don't understand trauma with kids or adults. And that's so true. I think that speaks to what Dr. Lockhart said earlier about just training, right? Just training people in general, right? About the knowledge of handling those who are maybe responding in a way that's, from trauma. And we also have Arshia Hasnain. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name.
You got it.
Such a great topic. April is Child Abuse Awareness Month. So thank you so much for bringing that to our attention. And we have Asti Van Sweet. I'm really enjoying the show. I was raised differently. It made me what I am today. I realized where I grew from. I had to learn to face the frantic race of life. I did 86% of stuff myself, from my school fees to clothing. I'm strong now. I will not make this mistake with my future kids. Thanks, Sir TAIWO. Good job, guys.
Senior TAIWO.
Senior TAIWO. Okay. TAIWO, thank you. Good job, guys. Thank you so much, Asti, for your comment and your encouragement. And then we also have Ogbagnaya Joy. Well, did I ruin that one too?
You got it. You got it. I see how you ran through it smoothly.
I know, I'm sorry, guys. Please.
I see how you were skillful. You just, that was good.
Okay, I'm trying. Well done, Alinko. Keep changing the trend. So thank you so much, everyone, for your comments.
We really appreciate you all for being part of the conversation. Please keep sharing the feed if you're watching us on Facebook. Christina Bracy, I've seen you've chimed in a lot. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. I hope you've shared it. Thank you so much. Okay. As Steven, I hope you shared it too. Rebecca, Cheryl Jenkins, I hope you all are sharing it. And for those who have not commented, because if you don't comment, sometimes we are not able to see your name. So if you haven't commented, you haven't seen your name, kudos to you. Please, let's keep sharing and let's be part of this very important topic. Attorney Taiwo, I know there was a question on the floor earlier. I don't know if you recall.
I recall.
Okay, good. It's 7:28 p.m. Central. Attorney Taiwo, go ahead.
So who we are today, because of how we were raised, I think childhood defines, adulthood. Dysfunctional childhood cannot translate to functional adulthood. It's not going to work. So at the end of the day, we learned a whole lot of things. So when a child is going to speak for the first time, the child speaks the dominant language of the environment in which the child is growing up. It would be so naive of us to think it was only the language that the child picked. The child picked everything. Myra Montessori called it absorbent mind. He said what you do to a child does not go to the memory of the child, it goes to the soul of the child. There's a guy called Frantz Fanon. Frantz Fanon did a psychoanalysis of the oppressed people of Algeria, to the point of the kind of dreams they had. They were oppressed in their dreams, and so for me, science has proven again and again that we are products of our childhood. You see, if you watch this series that is called Criminal Minds, in Criminal Minds, every series takes us back to the childhood of the person who has become a sociopath or a psychopath. They take us back to that childhood. But the point of departure for me is that cannot be the basis upon which we build a tent and continue to mess up and say, look at your story, look at what you went through, look at how you have tweaked it and you are doing something different. My greatest motivation today to help other people is because I never enjoyed a childhood. No adult believed in me. That's the truth. And today I want to believe in young people. I don't give young people second chance. I give them countless, limitless chances. I don't give up on young people. I serve on the board of some schools. When the issue of expulsion comes up, I oppose it vehemently, no matter what the child has done. For me, expulsion is the equivalent of death sentence in the outside world. What lesson does death teach? So I oppose it, because for me, a child does not. You can't give up on a child until a child gives up on himself or herself. And what I've now known is that when you do not give up on a child, the child is not going to give up on himself or herself. So for me, it doesn't matter how we grew up. It matters how we grew up. It matters what we experienced. But we must come to a point in our lives where we must answer the question: do we want to be defined by how we were raised, or we want to rise above how we were raised to make a difference? I think that's the choice I had to make at a point in my life. Like, if I want to build my life around if not, that if not will be countless, and it will be an ingredient for an endless pity party. How I was raised, that's how I behave the way I behave. That's how I do these things that I do.
Attorney, let me interject real quick.
Yeah.
What should motivate individuals who had a terrible childhood to want to switch it around and become something better and work for something greater than they experienced?
I think what should motivate you is the fact that you must be interested in living society better than you met it.
Okay.
You must be interested. If your experience was truly painful and you understand the impact of it, you must be an agent that doesn't want to experience that, doesn't want to repeat that kind of experience for other people. That's your motivation. The fact that
there you go.
I feel the pain. I understand what it means, and so for me, it now becomes my motivation. See, what was become so people explain what I experienced, they become something else. They become they keep inflicting that pain.
There you go.
But I think the interjection for me was the fact that I met God, right? I met Christ, and that became a turning point in my life. And see, the truth of the matter is there's no way I can tell my story without the God factor. But the God factor also is not an excuse for irresponsibility, because there are also people who claim to have met God, but the real thing there is that you must be ready to work with God, to understand His own plan for healing.
Yeah.
God has a plan for healing. And
because the same God factor is what people are using to destroy others, right? To inflict pain on others.
Yes.
Right.
So if you meet God, like you meet a doctor, like you meet Dr. Lockhart, she has a treatment plan for you. After properly diagnosing diagnosis, the next thing is to begin to take you through a treatment plan. So are you ready to work with God to go through His own treatment plan? Because there's a treatment plan.
And keep to it in the long term.
Yes, and keep to it, because for me, I signed up for that treatment plan. And as time goes on, if I have the time, I'm going to share for those who care, those things that I found that helped me, those things that helped me, because I believe that at the end of the day, I've never sat down at any point in time in my life to make resolutions to change habit. I just kept dealing with the content of my character. I just changed what I was feeding on. There were things that I was feeding, because there's a guy called Eric McManus. He said, what informs you forms you. What informs you forms you. So the way I tell people to change is not to make resolutions. If you make resolutions, you make as many as you break as many as you make. Maybe resolution can be a starting point for you. But what do you need to do? You need to change the content, the source that is feeding your mind. When you begin to change the source that feeds your mind, you see yourself conforming to that source. That's the foundational thing for me. So I discovered 5 things, if I can quickly run through them. As solution, number 1 is the fact that if you were damaged, don't minimize it. Don't minimize it. If you experience any kind of abuse, don't minimize it. Don't run away from the reality of dealing with it. I've seen a lot of adults doing that. They don't even want to accept that anything happened. Don't minimize it. Accept the impact of your upbringing. It might be negative, it might be positive. Accept it. Number 2 is you must understand that healing is a possibility. Change is an ever-present possibility for any human being who is ready to take responsibility. You cannot move beyond your belief. As a matter of fact, the line between healing and remaining where you are is that belief. So you must bring yourself to a point It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how far you have gone. It's to come to that point to understand, like Claire Booth said, there are no hopeless situations, only hopeless people. A situation does not become hopeless until the people in that situation become hopeless. And so you accept the fact that there's healing, there's a possibility of it. Number 3 is to find out the requirement for healing. What are the requirements for healing? What will it take me to, what do I need to do? And in coming to requirement, you may not be able to do it alone. You may need the help of a therapist. You may need the help of a doctor. You may need the help of professionals. You may need the help of, whatever help you need. You need to recognize the provisions for healing. Number 4 is you must subscribe to it. You must subscribe to it. You see, because it's one thing for you to realize that I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. Another thing is for you to subscribe. Subscription means that you want to give time and resources to it. You want to give time and resources to it. Number 5, which is the last one, you must submit to it. Because for me, I've come to recognize that it's not everybody that subscribes that submits. People subscribe to things that they don't use. People subscribe to things because everybody is subscribing to it. And at the end of the day, it does not change their life. Now, where does submission comes in? Submission comes in by identifying the things that you want to change in your life part time. I want to change this. I don't want to talk this way. I don't want to relate this way. I don't want to look at issues this way. Identify those things and begin to begin to attach them to your subscription. In a while, between a period, it may be a short period, it may be a long period, depending on your dedication under God, you will see that your life will begin to transform before you.
We do have a responsibility in this world to make it a better place. As adults, as people, men and women, we definitely do have a responsibility, because a lot of the people, those who came before us, or a lot of those who came before us, made some mistakes, and a lot too did some great things.
Yes.
I guess that's why we have the world the way it is now.
Mm-hmm.
But the most important thing is that we are here, and there's a whole lot of future ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
More importantly, a huge future ahead of the younger generation.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we didn't like what was, or if we don't necessarily like what is today,
Mm-hmm.
then it's on us to make it better for now and for the future. And
Mm-hmm.
so that should be one of our motivations, to want to see a good future, to want to see a good time, a better situation for now and in the future, so that we can put ourselves in maybe not so convenient situations, just so we can make it better. Just so we can make it better. And I think that's the thing that keeps ringing in my head as we speak and as we discuss these things. Michelle, I know you have some things to say. Dr. Lockhart, I know about. Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, no, I just think that those steps that TAIWO gave us are very practical, very transparent, and I really, agree with them. I think that if we really, as adults, connect with the inner child with us, inside of us, and really spend time with that inner child, and really, kind of go through those steps that he talked about, I think that we all would be better off. As a matter of fact, I just might do that after today's show. So thank you for that advice. But I think it's very practical and very doable for us to, start. You got to start somewhere. Let's make a decision to start and heal ourselves and heal that child within.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Michelle. Dr. Lockhart, you mentioned, I think, 5 different types of trauma, or 5 different types of things that causes trauma, right, in children: emotional abuse, neglect, and all of that. I know they are all trivial and impact greatly negatively, but which one would you say that, like, maybe 2 of them, that would you say that those ones are like most difficult for people to deal with?
So that's the interesting thing about trauma. And I think Michelle led with it at the beginning, that what feels like a paper cut to one person can feel like, your arm is, being removed without anesthesia for another person. So I think it would be incorrect to look at it that way, because some people, children will be really devastated by their parents being divorced, and some children will be sad about that, but maybe not as I think what we know, however, is that any of them are challenging to recover from without doing those things that really, Taiwo speaks to, and some of the 5 things he talks about, and it's about connecting with someone who can really hold that for you. I think what happens so often is that because we don't identify it as trauma, we don't think it's a big deal. We connect with people who diminish our experience and criticize and judge us for our experience, and use that as reasons to say this person's never going to amount to anything. And so and I think we get a better understanding if we look at it more of any of those can be extremely challenging to overcome. To I think it was 10 different people, but all of them can be overcome with the right support, and all of that support comes from parents, which our discussion has really been around how do we get adults to address that, the healing that's needed. And so the one thing I would add to what Taiwo said, which was so perfectly stated, I think, is the more we can recognize what trauma looks like in ourselves and in other people, we can help support those who aren't ready to, they don't have the wherewithal to recognize that they're even experiencing trauma, that they're responding in ways that are harmful, that show that they have some unhealed trauma. Because for those folks who can say, this is not how I want to live my life, I need to go and get help, they will do that. But there are going to be some people who won't have that wherewithal. And if we, the people around them, whether it's coworkers, whether it's, their physician, whomever, can recognize like this behavior is not a bad person. This is behavior that shows a traumatized person. And I'm going to do whatever I can to hold space for that, connect with them so that they can get to those steps that Taiwo mentioned. And so I hope that helps. And because, I think when we think about them from our standpoint, of course, like who wants their child to deal with sexual abuse? And we think divorce, well, we can, nobody wants that, but you're thinking if I had to choose out of a bag. But again, I think we know that all of those can be traumatizing, but we can absolutely help our children to heal and not have long-term, devastating effects from it when we mitigate that. And that looks like talking with them, like I said, spending time connecting, but a couple other things that I didn't mention, really talking about the emotions. A lot of times adults, we are responding in ways that we would never want our children to respond to things that make us angry. Parents who are in the store and someone was rightfully rude and you are, yelling and cussing at them. What our children see is what they do. And so again, if you are doing these harmful things, not only do you cause trauma, but then you're not teaching the children how to navigate that after they've been harmed. How do I deal with the emotions that come with that? And that's how you create what we call, resilience after a traumatic event. You really have to connect, and connect looks like talking about those things, all the things that, really that Taiwo said, those are all about connecting. And sometimes people can do that on their own. Sometimes they need support of, a mental health professional, a coach, a physician, a family member, a pastor. But most of us are going to have to do something because it's not going to go away.
Thank you so much for sharing. We want to talk about the "it takes a village" part of this conversation, and I think that's one of the things that we're looking at and maybe Attorney Taiwo, you may want to touch on this. How important is that concept? It takes a village. I want to share a personal story from a friend quickly. So she's writing the book. In the book, she said there are many stories. One of them is that when she was growing up on the West Side, a young kid, one of their friends, was neglected by their mother. The child had nothing, literally nothing, no food, no clothes, nothing. So her and her sisters would take turns in feeding their friend who they went to elementary school and high school with. One day they were all playing in the park. Their friend, this young kid. Now, while this was going on, there was an elderly man who always would walk in front of their building and to his work. And everybody loved him in that community. Everybody loved Mr. Kenny. He was just a nice man. And one eventful day, this young kid who they were taking turns in helping as young friends, I think got fed up with the neglect that he was going through, fed up with the situation he was going through, and decided to rob this old man on his way back from work. He hides somewhere and hit him on the head with a bottle. The man falls on his face, kills him. They get, of course, the police apprehends him. He ends up in jail. Now that was what 13 at the age of 13 or 14, and she was sharing, and so this has to do, this connects to the conversation that we're having, trauma, and how he ends up. I mean, the guy is out of jail now, but he spent 25 years of his life in jail. Now, what do you think will become of this man if God does not intervene? And the couple with the fact that the people in the community, especially the ladies, they try to help this guy. What they did not do was to tell their mother that, look, or the adults in the neighborhood that, no, this young kid, our friend is going through trauma. But they just thought that, well, we can help him by giving him food sometimes, but maybe they didn't know that that was not enough. The young man needed more than that, and they, as young people, couldn't help. So, Dr. Taiwo, this ties again into the community coming together in raising children, which is something that used to work, But again, Dr. Lockhart, I'm sure you want to touch on that, as well as Michelle. We only have about 12 minutes, so maybe if you guys can help us summarize it. Attorney Taiwo, you want to take it from here? You were muted. I'm sorry.
So in our organization, we believe that parents are divided into two. You have what we call the primary parents and the secondary parents. There's no parents anywhere in the world that is equipped enough. That's the primary parent, the biological parent, that has all that it takes to raise children and bring out of them everything that God has deposited into them. It takes a system to raise children. It takes a system run by a village, but the challenge that we need to deal with is, how do we see children? Now, I wrote an article. I write an article every Sunday on LinkedIn, which I call Sociologue. And 2 weeks ago, I was saying that I did not become a father when I had my first child at the age of 51. I've been a father for a very long time, well before then. And I was saying that until you become the father of all, you cannot become the father of one. Until you become the father of all, you can't become the father of one. And if your mentality is that I'm going to raise my child, focus on only my child, you forget your child is going to exist in a world. If you do not fix that world, what is going to happen is that your child is going to also be harmed in that world. If he's not harmed, he's going to be influenced negatively in that world.
Yeah.
And that is why it is important for us, even for your own selfish interest, to say, I want to show interest in the community because my child is going to operate in the community. If my child is going to get married, he's going to get married in the community. Whatever my child wants to go to do with the community. So I am interested in first being a father of all before you become the father of one. And you know what happened? Mark Zuckerberg had his first child. And when he had that first child, he released a letter. He said he doesn't want to give all of his inheritance to that child. He wants to use all of his inheritance to build a better world. And his motivation is this child that he just had. so that the child can live in a better world than we have it right now. So for me, that's the motivation for me. That's the way it should go. I'm interested in every child. I'm interested in every child that is troubled. I'm interested in every child that is well, not even every child that is troubled. I'm interested in guiding every child that comes my path. And that's what I've done all my life before we had our first child. So what I did not know, that when we're waiting for a child, we were preparing. What I did not know, that the affection we were showing, the training we were receiving for other children, we are now able to take out of that to train our own little child. So for me, it is about first seeing yourself as the father of all, the father of nations, the mother of nations. Then before you now walk it back and become the father of your children. But you see, it is reverse we teach today. Is you have to be the father of your children first before you can be the father of all. But it's not that way, because when you do that, what is going to happen is that you are not going to you find yourself in a place where you have $1,000, and the question now is, who needs it most, my son or the son of my neighbor? If you say, I'm first a father to my son, you're going to find yourself giving that money to your son, though your son does not need it as much as your neighbor needs it. Now, what stands between your neighbor and life is that $1,000. But your son is fine. So you're going to find yourself not being able to make those difficult decisions when it is critical. So for me, it takes a village. But three things must happen to the village. The village needs to be properly reoriented, that when you help other people's children, you are not helping them. You are helping yourself. You are helping other people's children. Now, when people who mess up this world, they don't start with their families most of the time. They mess up, they go and mess up the world from outside. And secondly, when people want to bless this world, most of the time, they don't start with their family. So when we fix children, we are fixing the community. We are fixing our world. We are making our world a better place. Look at the father that raised Jeff Bezos, that raised Jeff Bezos was raised by his stepfather. Look at Bill Gates, raised by his father. But all of them recognize one thing: we need to raise our children in a way that they can become a resource point, a part of circle to the world. So for me, it takes a village, and all of us must take responsibility. And that's why we must commend what the Progressive Mind Show is doing, spending this much time, investing in the community. And because we know that at the end of the day, we are not going to live in silos. We're not going to live in isolation. We live within a community, and it is important. So when the going gets tough, somebody said, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. No. My friend, Mr. Alakunle now says, when the going gets tough, the tough does not keep going. The tough must therefore seek collaboration. Therefore, to collaboration, we must turn.
Wow. Powerful. Dr. Lockhart, your take on the village concept and the little thing Dr. Attorney TAIWO, thank you so much for sharing that. Because the thing is, you're not going to spend 90 all the time. You don't spend all the time with your children. You don't spend the entire time of their life or their child or their upbringing within your space. They go out. So you can decide to just look, be more only mindful of your children and not take care of the outside, but they're going to go out there and they're going to be influenced by what is out there. So it's always good to invest in what's outside in as much as we look on the inside. So thank you so much for sharing. And I'm getting this inspiration. I don't know if Michelle has anything to say before Dr. Lockhart responds to the same question. Michelle, I don't know if you have any comments before Dr. Lockhart responds.
No, I just think this has been an excellent conversation. I think that we need to continue this maybe not next week, but definitely.
All right, Dr. Lockhart, we have 5 minutes, so please go ahead and respond to the same text.
I mean, so much of what Attorney TAIWO said, again, I agree with. I think the one thing that jumped out at the very beginning was when he said that no set of parents has everything that their child needs to bring out all those things. And that is so, I don't think I've ever heard it articulated that way. And I think normalizing that, because I think parents often feel like they are missing something if they can't be everything, give everything to their children. And the reality is you just can't. Nobody has all the things, right? And so when I think of how I grew up, I come from humble beginnings, a working class family, but how I got through college, with my mom being, having three daughters to put through college. That happened because, the family pooled resources. When something's going on, we figure it out as a family. There were neighbors, when things were going on, and we, supported, and they supported us. And so, absolutely, the idea that, we are connected whether we want to be or not. You can focus on your family, but again, it was just so well stated that when you're making a choice to help, and move outside of your family to do that, you're not doing that just for them. You're doing that for you, because we can't bubble off ourselves.
Yeah.
So when there's crime in a community, it doesn't matter that I live miles away. That affects me as well. And so, absolutely. And I think getting back to that recognition that we need each other to raise children who can go in the world and be who they want to be.
Yeah.
That comes with, developing some shared values and shared language around what it looks like. And so I think, for me, it really is healing our community trauma so that we can really be in community with each other in ways that allow us to raise children as a village with the same thought process in mind.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow. 3 minutes to time. We'll try and end today at 8 exactly. We always go past it. Today we're on time. Michelle, I thought we were going to be able to get all of this before 8, but obviously we got it wrong. This has been a very deep and insightful conversation. I really want to thank my guests for coming on and sharing. If I may, I'll say TAIWO is making great points. In fact, the panel is great. Keep us educating and keep us educating. Okay, keep educating us and giving us the best to enable us to enable us to victors in all that we do. Okay, I guess you get to be victorious in all that we do. God bless you all. Thank you so much, Ifa, for your comment. I sincerely love this show. It's a show that is one of a kind. Thanks and keep it up. My brother Ifa, thank you so much for being part of the community building show. 2 minutes and we'll try and wrap up. My brother, I know we could have kept going on. Johnny Woods, I know you just came in. Thank you for showing up. But let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up real quick. Let's start with Attorney TAIWO, your quick 30 seconds closing remarks.
Well, what I will say quickly is the fact that at the end of the day, a candle does not lose anything by lighting another. So we have to be committed to leave the world a better place than we met it. There are two mentalities you can have. You have the main rain-beating chicken mentality, which is thinking about everything that has gone wrong and building your life around it. Or you can have the game changer mentality to say, anywhere I get to, I must bring a change, and it is possible. So change is an ever-present possibility for any human being who is ready to take responsibility. The real there is that responsibility to lead a change. You may not be able to do everything, but there's something you can do. And you cannot say because you cannot do everything, you neglect that one thing that you can do.
Attorney TAIWO, I've always wanted to do this, but I keep forgetting. You have a platform that you teach, and do training. Please put your stuff out there. Let people follow you and how they can contact you for more.
Okay, every month we have a program which we call No Protectional Childhood. It's happening on the 23rd of April this month. It's online, and we try to talk about matters that has to do with safety and protection of children. Then we also have a program, Power Parenting, which happened. It was an in-person program, happened last month, but we are planning another one for the month of May. We'll keep you posted. You can follow me on Instagram at TAIWO AKINLAMI Returns, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm also on LinkedIn also. You can follow me at TAIWO AKINLAMI. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And very soon you're going to see his logo and his projects on the Progressive Minds page and all of that. He's a great friend. great partners. When Dr. Bath introduced us, um, we talked on the phone. There was some power in the conversation. It was a long time ago. I'm glad that it's bearing fruit now. We're seeing it live now. Dr. Lockhart, your closing remarks, please.
My mentor, friend, teacher, Dr. S.A.F.E says, and I put it in our chat, that, we're all walking around, we're all the walking wounded, she says. And so I think just recognizing that, we've all had places of harm. And without healing that, we will unintentionally pass that on to our children. So finding ways to connect with folks who can help you heal that trauma so that we can, as a community, do better by each other, do better by our children, and just do better as a whole. And the final message, again, if you forget everything I say, connection mitigates trauma, all trauma. And so connecting with someone looks like really being with them in that moment and not judging them, not offering advice unless they ask, just really, seeing their pain and saying, I believe you, even if it was something that doesn't make sense to me. And I'm gonna, stay in this with you and help you find the healing that you need, whether it's through a therapist or a coach. And so I think it is part of the liberation of our community. So it's important to me that we all get some language around it and get some healing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Lockhart. Thanks for bringing these experts back. Another great show, Johnny Woods. My brother, thank you. Michelle, this has been awesome. Looks like we had a God-led one. Be a listening ear. I love this show. Thank you so much, Christina Bracy. Man, I'm short for words, but Michelle, this was powerful.
It absolutely was powerful. And I just, as a parent too, have my own personal takeaways from today. I think I love what you said. Connection mitigates trauma, so that could even help me in navigating, whatever the future holds for me as a parent with my child as well. So thank you so much for that. And TAIWO, thank you so much just for everything, just being so transparent. This is really a great show. Thank you for tuning in too.
Thank you.
Look, guys.
Lockhart, it's been great hanging out with you again today.
You too.
Alinko, great show. Miss Michelle, thank you so much. I've had a wonderful time tonight.
Me too. Thank you, everybody. It's been lovely.
It's been a pleasure having everyone on the show. This has been the Progressive Mind Show. And today's topic we just talked about is the impact of trauma on children's development. It takes a village. And I hope that you took something from this. We're always on Facebook and on YouTube, The Progressive Mind Show. You can follow us, like our page, keep sharing this so that we can all educate ourselves. Remember, June 4th, save the date, the exchange ceremony. If you want to know more about the exchange ceremony, go on our website, The Progressive Mind Show, or the PMSshow.com. Look for the exchange tab, the exchange ceremony tab. Scroll all the way down, check out the pictures so you can have a better idea of what is to come. And this is going to be even bigger and bigger and bigger come June 4th. We're partnering with a lot of folks in Chicago to make this one a success. We're going to be, of course, awarding Reverend Jesse Jackson in a very beautiful African traditional way that has not been seen in the city of Chicago. It's a promise. And so make a date with us, June 4th. By God's grace, Chicago is going to see a beautiful thing. Michelle, wonderful show. Thank you so much for being on and for all that you do and for making time to come on the show and for helping with the branding, the marketing and everything. If you want branding or marketing for your business, Michelle, what's your social media?
Just at Michelle Okenard. You guys, my name is right there on the screen. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. So reach out to me. If you
great brand manager. Remember, to whom much is given, much is required. This has been your host again, Alinko. We will be here next week, Wednesday, to continue the community building conversation. Have a wonderful night, you all. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.